Welcome to the 2026 Dialogue, a masterclass series by the HR Association of India. I am Neha Jagnani, and today we are exploring a theme that sits at the intersection of finance, business, strategy, and collaboration. It's about how finance can evolve from a reporting function to a true driver of value across the organization. Our theme for this session today is cross functional financial excellence, driving collaboration from reporting to value creation. To explore this, we are joined by Mr. Bhavik Bhimani. Bhavik is the Vice President and Global Finance Controller at Thomas Cook India Limited and a chartered accountant with over 19 years of experience across multiple sectors, including travel, private equity, power, and textiles. He leads finance, MIS, budgeting, consolidation, and compliance at both entity and group levels, while driving automation and supporting strategic decision making across subsidiaries. A CFO Next 100 2023 honoree for excellence in digital transformation, Bhavik is also known for his thought leadership in governance, internal controls, and risk management. Bhavik, thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Neha, and thanks to HRAI for organizing this event. I am definitely I'm participating in many of the events of HRAI, and I really appreciate the efforts has been put for this type of events, which really helps everyone, specifically to the freshers and the earlier career team players, so that they will take care of this while in their careers throughout.
Sure, thank you so much for your kind words, Bhavik. I look forward to this exciting masterclass. So, to begin with, my first question for you, Bhavik, is finance has traditionally been seen as a reporting function. So, what does it take to transform it into a cross-functional value driver?
Sure. Yeah. So, I'll take this into three. I feel that this is basically there is a three deliberate shifts that is needed. First is basically the mindset. Now, the mindset has to be move from, did we hit the numbers to what will change the numbers? That is first shift that is needed. Second is on the capability side. Now, eventually we as a finance, we have been reporting static numbers, which we'll have to leave aside in terms of there has to be a forward-looking insight to the numbers or whatever you report to the management or to the business side of it. And that insights has to be, on the profitability side, on cash, on risk, or on the capital drivers. So second was the capability side of it. Third, I would say the positioning. Now, from traditionally the back office storekeeper to embedded as a business partner. Now, in terms of revenue, in terms of operation, strategic decisions to the business. So overall, this three shifts is needed. In my experience, finance becomes a value driver when it stops closing the books for the business and starts co-creating the decision with the business, so around margin, around working capital, and pricing and risk strategy.
Sure, thank you so much. Just to summarize, three things needs to be transformed. One is mindset, second is capability, and third is positioning. And I think you beautifully put it that when you connect the dots to business goals, that's when you become business enabler. So thank you so much for that. My next question, Bhavik, is you are actively, driven cross-functional collaborations. What are the biggest finance barriers, barriers that finance teams actually face when working with business function?
Sure. Yeah. So, I feel the three common barriers, what I would say, first on the language game. Okay. Finance often speaks in the ratios and, variances, while business teams think in customer, occupancy, growth, and all this stuff. Now, you'll have to marry this language gap. You will always be talking about as a traditional finance with ratios, variances. But however, you will have to understand the business aspects of it also. So that is the first gap. I think there is a need to bridge that gap. Second is on the timing gap. Now, insights comes generally after decisions are already made. So, making finance feel that definitely will, irrelevant at times. So you need to make sure that you are providing the inputs to the management, to the business stakeholders on timely basis, so that the business can take the real time decisions, and definitely they will drive the profitability, and it will hit your bottom line to the business. That was the second one. Third is on the trust gap. Now, if finance is seen only as a control or compliance, collaboration becomes defensive. So I think from the business side of it, and from the management, of course, and from the finance, finance is not only seen as a finance, but you will have to also seen as a partnering to the business. And the breakthrough happens when finance team shows that they are here to improve the outcomes and not just challenging the numbers what has been presented.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. Just to summarize, the gaps, as you rightly mentioned, becomes language. Finance usually talks in ratios, and while business communicates in terms of customers, occupancy, and growth. Second was the timing, how timely your insights are for the team to make those decisions, effectively. Last but not the least, the trust factor, which I think is very, very important for the finance to become the business partner. So thank you so
Right.
much. My next question, Bhavik, is how can finance leaders ensure that insights generated from data are actually influencing decisions across departments?
Sure. So, insights influence decisions only when they are framed around actions, I would say. Okay. Now, not data. It has to be like, renegotiating credit terms, changing pricing, exit loss making customers. So you have to have data have to have a framed around actions. Okay. That is first. Second, delivered in a business forum. So, not finance meetings only. Now, finance team as a and entire the finance fraternity have to make sure that they provide the clarity, they provide the insight in the sales review meeting or maybe the business review meetings. And there are calls that is also happening across on weekly basis to the business team. So you need to make sure that do deliver all these business forums at the right time, and of course with the clarity of data, with the insights of data that you have.
Sure.
Third is on the link to value creation. Now, what is happening all this while? We as a finance, we have been presenting the data. There are various kind of data that we possess as a finance, and we generally, show this in various forums. But however, now there is a time to, add to the data to the value creation. Now, it generally happens when you clearly shows the impact on your EBITDA margin, or maybe impact on your cash flow or enterprise value that with the business. So I think this is the third one. What I feel, malab, these are the areas that generally one should focus as a finance, which will drive you to the next level. One principle I follow is that if an insight does not trigger a decision, it's just a interesting report, I would say.
Sure, sure, sure. So data without insights and a story around it. And as you said, that it should be framed around actions. And if not, it is just purely an insights, which is not gonna benefit any decision maker. So thank you so much. My next question, Bhavik, is in a dynamic industry like travel, how important is real-time collaboration between finance and business teams for driving performance?
See, it is very critical, I would say. Okay. Now, since now I have almost 10 years of experience working with the travel industry. Travel is, driven by volatility, as everybody knows that. Demand shifts, there can be a fuel increase in, the prices, there can be a FX movement, seasonality, and a competitive pricing. So if finance works on a monthly cycle while business is, moving on daily basis, value is lost. So you have to contribute to the business on daily basis. You have to be involved yourself to the day-to-day decision making that business is doing, the challenges that business is facing it. Now, real-time collaboration enables faster pricing, the margin decisions, better cash and working capital controls, I would say, early risk identification instead of the post-mortem the explanations. In travel, the speed of insight is a competitive advantage and not a luxury. Now, let me just give you one practical example. Now, of course, everybody, business will definitely go through in take care of their respective P&L. But at the same time, it is also important that business focus on their respective balance sheets of the business. Of course, a balance sheet is at the entity level, but there it can bifurcate it to the business level. Now, you will need to make sure that as a finance, make your business understand the balance sheet aspect of the business. Now, it can be, just a classic example of a working capital drivers. Now, we have this major four working capital drivers. First is, of course, when you're saying there are advances to vendors that you pay. Second, I would say on the customer side, which is your advance from customer that you receive. Third, again on the customer side, which will be your debtors, which you are supposed to get the money from. And fourth is on the creditors that you are supposed to pay to the vendors. Now, these four parameters, the drivers, business will have to understand to the core. And once they understand, through which they will be advantage to their capital mechanism, the capital drivers, and there will be a working capital management benefit in terms of lowering the interest cost. So I think other than the P&L aspects of it, business should definitely focus on the balance sheet aspect of it as well. So which will drive you to the next level in terms of benefiting your business P&L, and which will definitely at the end creating the value.
Sure, sure. Keeping a close track on balance sheet is what my takeaway from this and not just the P&L. So this brings us to
Yeah.
the last question, Bhavik, for today's session, which is if you had to give one clear advice, what should finance team starts doing today to move from reporting numbers to creating value creation?
Sure. So three things. First, stop one report, okay, to start with. Second, start one conversation. And third, influence one decision. So, very practically, if I would say, kill reports that you don't, drive actions. So you will have to do the analysis of what all things you are doing on daily basis in terms of you yourself as a finance and your team as well, and just derive those reports which actually doesn't drive any action. We are just doing for the sake of doing, since that is the normal practice that we follow on monthly basis. I think one should do this exercise and identify those reports that you can kill definitely, and through which, if you kill those reports, there will not be any difference in terms of, and there will not be any bottleneck to the things that we are driving with business. That is first. Second is on the focus on the one value lever. It can be your cash, it can be your margin, it can be your cost side, whether it is direct cost or indirect cost, or it can be a risk side of it. So this is second, is basically focus on all these parameters. That is the second one. Third is, I would say, the influence one decision. Now, actively participating in one business decision, that will definitely help, the business to take the appropriate action on time. So I think third is you will have to involve yourself in the decision making of the business. And for that, of course, you will have to involve yourself in the matters which is closely, the business is doing on day-to-day basis, so that you will have to involve yourself in terms of, so that you will get that understanding of the business, and you at the same time you are definitely aware about the numbers and everything, so that you can help business taking the right decision at the right time. That is what I would say on this.
Sure, thank you so much. I would say very simply put, very important, starting with one report, starting with one conversation and focusing on those parameters, be it your margins, cash flow, and last but not the least, start with that one decision. And I think finance people are more closer to knowing the ground reality. It's not just about numbers anymore. It's about you creating value for the businesses and giving them the picture of what could be the best decision. So thank you so much for your insights. On behalf of HREI, we really value your participation in this, and I'm sure our listeners are going to greatly benefit. And today, actually, you have reinforced an important truth, Bhavik, which is finance is no longer about numbers now. It's more about how they enable businesses and continue to contribute in the sustainable outcomes. So thank you so much for your insights.
My pleasure, Neha. And thanks to you and thanks to HRI for organizing this session.
My pleasure, Bhavik. Thank you so much.
Thank you.